The Radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. The Radical. Fundamental principles. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Thursday evening. I forgot it was Thursday. I was supposed to do something on Friday, and my wife said, we're going to do this and this tomorrow. And I said, no, tomorrow's not Friday. This week is gone. I don't know where it's gone, but it's gone. It went fast. And here we are, Thursday night. It's going to be Friday tomorrow. The weekend is around the corner. And I have no idea where the week went. And I didn't get everything I needed done. So I'm way behind. Anyway, welcome to one of the regular segments, new regular segments on the Yaron Brook Show, which is the Tucker Carlson BS Watch. And we're going to be very busy on the Tucker Carlson BS Watch because it's ongoing, constant, nonstop. So I have dedicated myself to going after the new right. Tucker Carlson is probably the most prominent media personality that has adopted new right views. I mean, he'll adopt any views if he thinks it'll get him viewers and if he thinks it'll get him prominence. So, but right now he is the voice of the new right. Ever since he stopped being a kind of a conservative libertarian type, Tucker's deteriorated dramatically, and truth is the great victim. So we're going to take a segment. It's not particularly important issue that he talks about, but it's just a reflection of what he's become, a kind of a ignorant nativist who aspires to nature, hates civilization. He's just awful. He's just awful. And so I thought we'd analyze one of his videos just to show you how terrible he is. I don't know how many of you actually watch Tucker Carlson, but this is a great opportunity. Yeah, once in a while he says some stuff when he attacks the left that I will agree with, but you got to judge people by what they stand for, not what they stand against. And Carlson stands for and what he stands against, because he's going to tell us what he stands against. And I think what you'll see is the utter BS. So we'll do Sam Cedar BS. We'll do Tucker Carlson BS. We're also going to do some other new right figures. I'm going to dedicate a chunk of hopefully the next few episodes and the next year's episodes to going after the new right, which I think is together with wokeism, the two worst intellectual kind of movements in America today, and we're going to fight them both. This is going to be fun. We're going to be engaging in hating episodes. Yes, Tazy, we're going to be doing a lot of hate. All right, remember, you can support the show and you can ask questions by using the super chat feature. 2 days ago, we started out really, really, really slow, but it really picked up, and we raised a significant amount, so that was great for the continuation of the show and the expansion of the message of the Yaron Brook Show and the message of reason, egoism, capitalism, which we try to promote on the show. So thank you for everybody who has already this year provided substantial support for the show. Don't forget to continue to do so today. $20 questions get priority. $20 questions get us closer to our goal faster. The goal, as always, is $600 during the show. There was a period there where I thought I'd raise it to $750, but we'll see. Thanks, Coke. Thanks for the support. There's Jonathan Honing, like clockwork, always on the show. Thank you for the support. Annalise is here. Annalise Hernandez is here to keep track of your contributions, and to keep you honest, and to inspire you and motivate you to get us to the $600 goal. So don't make Annalise wait for too long. Chip in there as we go along. All right. We did Sam Seder 2 nights ago. The short videos on Sam Seder have done very well. If you like them, feel free to share them. And generally, I think the short videos are built for sharing. So I really would appreciate if you guys would share those. That's how we'll grow the show. Hopefully, some of the people who you are friends with on social media will actually like the things that you share. So go for it. All right. So today we're going to do we're going to review a video by Tucker Carlson. The title of the video, at least the way he phrased it, it's time to notice the things that matter. But without, he talks about, he sets that up with about 2 minutes at the beginning, but then he jumps into what he's really interested in, which is the size of the United States, the population of the United States. Are there too many people in America? Which is a big concern for Tucker Carlson and the enemy of freedom and liberty, according to Tucker, is too many people. Too many people. The video is, somebody's asking how old is the video? Let's take a look. The video is 9 days old. 9 days old, so you can go back and find it. January 4th, 2022. It has 2.1 million views. The title of the video is Tucker, Why Is This Happening? That's the title of the video. All right. Hopefully we still got the frame and we can jump into this. It's a recent video. I found it a few days ago. I could have picked any Tucker video, could have done a similar analysis on almost any Tucker monologue. His monologues have gotten worse and worse and worse over the years, and reflecting a worse and worse perspective on the United States over the last few years. All right. And at least there is, so we have no questions so far. We have some money, but no questions. There's our first question by Tom. You are taking Cook's job with videos like this. Who's Cook? I'm taking Cook's job with videos like this. I don't know who Cook is. I'm not sure which Cook you're talking about. I'm not sure why I'm taking his job. But anyway, here we go. Let me see. Where is it? There we go. There's Tucker. Say hello to Tucker Carlson. And we will jump into playing the video. I'll stop him every 3 seconds with my commentary as Cook Wilcox. But why am I taking anything away from Cook? Does Cook do this all the time? I have no idea. Someday somebody will have to explain this to me. Ready? Ready?
How many people do you want living in your country?
How many people do you want living in your country? Is this been an important question for all of you? Because it's time to notice the things that matter, Tucker has told us. And one of the important things to matter is how many people do you want living in your country? And what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Let's say you want 5 people living in your country. Does that mean we should kick out a bunch of people so you can get what you want? How many people should decide how many people should live in our country? Should we vote on it? If a majority of the people wants more, should we force people to have babies? Should we allow immigrants in? If a lot of people want less, should we have a one-child policy like China had? Doesn't have it anymore. Panicked. Bad decision. One-child policy. How many? Who gets to decide? This is a really, really, really important question, according to Tucker Carlson.
The size of your population matters very much.
Why?
Size determines a nation's character. It often determines its fate. Yet we don't talk much about the size of our population. We probably should. The United States is growing faster than most Americans understand. If you were born in 1969, as some of us were, you arrived in a country with a little over 200 million people in it. There are now 334 million people in it.
So in 1969, there were 200 million. Now they have 320 million. So it's over 50% growth in how many years? How many years is that? I don't know if anybody did the math. Tucker Carlson's, I'm going to do it now in my head. That's 50 years. In 50 years, we've grown 50%. Oh God, where's my calculator? 50 years, we've gone 50%. Is that a lot? To grow 50% in terms of your population in 50 years? Doesn't seem like a lot. Does that seem like a lot to you guys? 50 years. Am I getting the math right? So is this a vast growth? Is this what's responsible for wokeism and the left and Donald Trump and all the bad things that have happened in America? 9/11, all the bad things, financial crisis caused by this 50% growth in the population? I don't know. Let's say if the population of America grew 1% a year over the last 50 years, how much would that be? I mean, really? How do you, is this a lot? Now, it sounds like a lot. Oh my God, we went from 200 million to 320 million. Wouldn't that just be caused by a healthy fertility rate? Yes, we've also had immigration, and our fertility rate has plummeted. But why is that a lot? By what standard is that a lot? I mean, the new right, people like Yoram Chazoni, Sahib Amari, and Sohab Amari, and many others complain constantly about the low birth rates of Americans. Well, if Americans had birth rates like the new right would like, I don't know, 2 point something, we'd be at 300 million with zero immigration. So what is the issue here? Why is population growth a problem? And is the growth in our population since 1969, which he has said has changed our character, where's the proof of that? It's a 50% growth in 50 years.
That's an awful lot of new people in an awfully short time. How many people is that exactly? Well, it's nearly twice the population of the entire western United States. That's 13 states, including California.
In 50 years have grown. Again, a birth rate that was above replacement. You know, that is not vast, huge population growth. And of course, we had immigration, luckily, because otherwise we would have shrunk.
That is massive and incredibly rapid demographic growth.
No, it isn't.
And it's accelerating.
Now, as a percentage of the population, that is 50% in 50 years. What are the numbers from 1900 to 1969? Far larger in terms of percentages. What are the numbers from 1776 to 1900? I mean, orders of magnitude larger than the population growth here. Was that a bad thing? Should we have stayed small? Maybe we should only have the population we had at 1776. How does one decide?
Immigration is now at the highest level ever recorded in American history.
Immigration is at the highest level it's ever been. That's certainly not true of this year, certainly not true of last year. Maybe it was true in the mid-teens in terms of sheer number of people, but in terms of a percent of the population, immigration is nowhere near its peak. The peak were in the 1870s all the way to pre-World War I. Immigration declined significantly after World War I. But as a percentage of the population, we had far, far, far higher immigration growth. Immigration growth in the, 100 years ago, 100 plus years ago, than we do today. Just inaccurate.
So is the number of foreign-born already living here?
Number of foreign-born already living here is about the same as it was at the late 19th century, early 20th century, at the height of American power. During the period where America became the richest country in the world, became the most powerful military in the world, the time that America became an industrial and powerhouse, a wealth-creating powerhouse. This is, and yes, there were about 14% of Americans were foreign-born back then. It's just under that right now. Is that a bad thing? Was it a bad thing in the 1890s? Is it a bad thing today? By what standard? Is Tucker Carlson giving us a standard? I mean, maybe the standard is that back then the foreign-born were all white Europeans, and now they're not white Europeans, and that's the standard. 14 is the same as it was in the late 19th century, early 20th century. I checked. It's not that hard to check. You can Google it. And you can get multiple sources, so you're not getting any biased sources. About 14%. We're close to the highest today. So, by what standard is that bad? What is the standard? Is Tucker giving us a standard?
Over just the last year, roughly 2 million people from the third world came across our borders illegally.
It's not true. That number's not true. But anyway, exaggerating these kind of numbers is exactly what Tucker and the right does.
All of them arrived with the blessing of the White House. It makes
And then why were they sent back? So many of them sent back in spite of the blessing of the White House. It's... Hey.
Makes you wonder what sort of economy Joe Biden imagines we're going to have going forward. Domestic manufacturing is in steep decline. Automation is...
Not true. Domestic manufacturing is at its peak, maybe not post-COVID, but pre-COVID, domestic manufacturing was at its peak with fewer people producing more goods than we'd ever produced in American history.
replacing many of the low-skilled jobs that still remain.
That's right. We've got automation. Tucker would have us stop the automation in order to save those jobs for those hardworking Americans, instead of letting the economy reorganize and creating new jobs for people as it always does. I mean, here is where Tucker Carlson is exactly the same as the left. Automation, technology, destroys jobs. What's the difference between him and Elizabeth Warren? Exactly.
So what are these millions of new people going to be doing for work 20 years from now?
Really? Is that the problem you have? What were the millions of people coming into Hong Kong? What did they do for work when they immigrated to Hong Kong? There were no jobs. What did the millions of people who came to the United States in the late 19th century do for work? There were no jobs. Not enough. You couldn't see the jobs. But when people come in, they create jobs. They create new consumers. Jobs come with them. Indeed, if what you cared about were jobs, and what you cared about was wealth, and what you cared about was economic activity, then the number one and easiest way to create economic growth in the United States, the easiest way to create economic growth in any semi-free country is to increase immigration. More people equals more economic growth. Everything else held constant, if you will. The one way you could almost instantly increase wealth across the entire planet is to open up borders and let people go to where they can be more productive. You're taking people who work in low productivity economies, bringing them to the United States where they could work in high productivity economies. Wealth globally would increase almost instantaneously, including the wealth of Americans. That's just economic reality, economic fact that Tucker Carlson used to, about 10 years ago, understand and know, and now is willing to lie about for political reasons. Malcolm, thanks for the support. I'll look for the question in a minute. So no, immigrants don't cause the economy to tank. Immigrants don't take jobs. Immigration, I mean, supposedly, we've heard that immigrants have been flooding this country. And yet, before COVID, unemployment was historical lows. In spite of the fact that immigrants have been flooding the country, supposedly. 1980s, lots of immigrants came. In the 1990s, lots of immigrants came, and yet unemployment's not really been a problem in the United States since the 1970s. So what's the issue? What is the damage that immigrants do? Except that they don't look like Tucker Carlson. And we don't like people who are different than us. We don't like the other. From economic perspective, immigration is not a harm. Now, Tucker doesn't mention about 1 million legal immigrants coming to the United States. And most of those legal immigrants come in at fairly high-paying jobs. They do fine. But he doesn't want them either. Because just having that legal immigration for 50 years, 1 million people, just that would get us to half of the increase in the population from 1969 to today. Tom says, I wish leftists were actually pro-immigration. They're hardly as pro-immigrant as they and right-wingers make them out as. I agree completely. It's the left that's always traditionally been anti-immigration. The left is the one that stopped George W. Bush from actually endorsing a big pro-immigration bill. It is the left, because of the connection to unions, always resisted immigration. Unions don't want the competition. All right.
They can't all be Nancy Pelosi's housekeepers. They can't all bus tables at the French Laundry in Napa.
Well, then let's pass a bill that zeroes out welfare. Or let's pass a bill that allows immigrants to come in if they can find a job. And let's make a bill that zeroes out welfare, so in 20 years they won't have anything if they don't get a proper job. Why is it Tucker Carlson's problem? But this fallacy about 20 years from now they won't have jobs. Again, he sounds like a conventional leftist.
And not all of them will, thank God. In spite of the Democratic Party's best efforts to import a permanent serf class to serve its donors, some of these immigrants will rise higher than Nancy Pelosi expects.
Yeah, they will.
They will. Some will fight their way to the top of our
Absolutely.
society with the usual combination of inborn talent and grit. And honestly, bless them for that. No one invited them here. We didn't want them to come, but we will be sincerely glad when they succeed.
Will you? And you didn't want them to come? Somebody wanted them to come. Somebody's paying them. Somebody's employing them. Somebody's taking their services. Somebody's enjoying the fact that they're producing and creating.
And yet, a country is more than the success of a handful of people, inspiring as that always is to watch. Sheer numbers matter too. Even if every single person who snuck across our southern border this year goes on to win the Nobel Prize in Chemistry, it would still be worth worrying about the effects that mass immigration have on our total population numbers.
Really? Really? Now there he's just endorsing a zero-sum view of the world. If every one of those immigrants won a Nobel Prize in Chemistry or whatever it was, the equivalent, would the rest of the population of the United States be worse off or better off? If every one of those people were that productive, were that creative, were that entrepreneurial, would the rest of the population be better off or worse off? Much better off. Much better off. And of course, we did not grow from 200 million to 320 million because of illegal immigration. Maybe there's 11, 12 million illegals in the country today. We grew from 200 million to 320 million. Remember the context, because he's setting up this context. The country's grown significantly. This growth has changed its character. And these illegals are coming across the border. And the implicit assumption is, well, it's the illegals who've caused this huge economic growth, this huge growth in the population. Where? There are only 12 million illegals in the U.S. So the growth in the population is either because we have babies or because we have legal immigration. And I thought legal immigrants are people we want, are people we invited. But he can't hold both. He has to assume all immigrants are illegal so he can paint them all as uninvited, sneak across the border, and imply that that's how the country grew to the size that it is today.
So the question is, how many people is too many? In Washington, you will never hear that question. More bodies in a country mean more power for the people who run it.
Really? I thought more bodies in the country means what? More bodies in the country.
Big nations need big governments. Politicians always want more people to rule, so the incentive for unrestrained population growth is baked right into the system. That's bad news for the rest of us.
Really? So big government is a phenomenon of big countries? So small countries, I don't know, Israel only has 10 million people, so it has a small government, pro-liberty government. Denmark, which has a small population, very small population, has a small government, freedom-loving. I don't know how many people live in North Korea, probably not that many, after they've killed so many. Does that mean that North Korea would have a small government? So there's a correlation. There's a correlation between the size and the size of government.
First and most obviously, big governments don't treat their citizens very well. Yes, that's a Reagan-era talking point. It's also...
Yeah, he apologizes for that. Notice. God forbid. God forbid we have a Reagan-era talking point.
True. The larger a bureaucracy becomes, the more impersonal it gets.
True, very true. So maybe we should limit government, limit its scope. But no, we don't want to limit its scope. We just want size, and size is somehow correlated with the size of the population.
Past a certain size, organizations of any kind lose their regard for people. As they get bigger, they get blunter, more soulless and cruel. The people in charge no longer care what you think. They don't have to worry about how their policies will affect you or your family. And that's the inevitable product of population growth.
So notice the implication here. The implication here is that small countries would have politicians who care. Small countries would care more about their citizens, and therefore would allow for more freedom, I guess, because we're believers in freedom. Is there a correlation between population size and freedom? Is there a correlation between population size and the size of government as a percent of GDP, for example? No, I don't think so. I haven't seen one. I can think of very big countries that are relatively free. I can think of very big countries that are relatively unfree. I can think of big countries where politicians are okay. There are no good ones. And I can think of small countries where politicians are awful. Oh, Linda, thank you. Did Pol Pot, who only ruled over 5 million people, did that prevent him from killing 2 million of them? Did Fidel Castro, who ruled over a small country, did that prevent him from enslaving all of his people? I mean, this is not... I mean, somebody's writing these scripts for Tucker Carlson, and somebody should be fired, because this is just stupid. It's just stupid. Somebody needs to proofread these things.
You had 5 children, you would bathe them all in love and attention. If you had 5,000 children, you wouldn't know their names.
Isn't it good that we are not our politicians' children, that we're not the children of our government, that the government is not here to take care of us, but to serve us, and to serve us in one particular realm, which is protection of our rights? But Tucker is not worried about unlimited government. He just doesn't like the size of it.
So in case you're wondering why our leaders no longer seem especially interested...
Do our leaders in small states seem more interested than our leaders in big states? I wonder if the governor of Rhode Island and the legislature in Rhode Island are much more concerned about their citizens than the government and the leadership of New York. I mean, you all know the answer to that. It's complete and utter garbage. It's complete and utter nonsense. Size does not matter. Not in this. Maybe in some roles in life.
in your health or happiness or prosperity, that's the reason. They don't have to be interested. Our population's too big. Why should your opinion matter? You're one of many. Previous generations of Americans didn't live in a country like this, and they would be stunned by the attitudes that are so common now. Attitudes.
But it's stunning because previous generation of Americans did live in a country as big as this. Population might have been smaller, but it was harder to communicate, harder to travel, harder to get from one place to another, right? It was, I mean, to compare is ridiculous. Yes, today we have more people. It's easier to communicate. It's easier to get from one place to another.
We take for granted. Arresting people for walking through the U.S. Capitol building?
Arresting people walking through the U.S. Capitol building. This is the level of Tucker Carlson. Arresting people for walking through the Capitol building. I've walked through the Capitol building many times. Sometimes to visit senators and congressmen, sometimes just as a tourist. Funnily enough, strangely enough, weirdly enough, and maybe because I'm an immigrant, nobody arrested me. They were arrested because they weren't invited. They were arrested because they broke in. They were arrested because they beat up cops on the way. They were arrested because they were trying to stop Congress from doing its job. They were arrested because they were a force of insurgency, of insurrection, of an attempt to overthrow a legitimate function of government. Not because they were peacefully walking through the Capitol building. I mean, God, I mean, Tucker's pathetic. I would never even discuss any of these issues, except that he is the most watched TV personalities in the country. More people watch Tucker Carlson than anybody else on any TV show, on any channel. This guy is nuts, a liar. And now I'm starting to question his intelligence, or at least the people who write these scripts for him. People walking through the Capitol building were arrested. It's terrible.
How is that a crime, 19th century Americans would wonder? For most of our history, Americans believed they owned the Capitol. They thought it was theirs because they assumed this was their country. Political leaders told them.
It is, and you can go any day and walk around the Capitol building. What's he implying here? That insurrection is wrong, Tucker. It is.
That it was. After the 1904 presidential election, Teddy Roosevelt greeted voters in person on the lawn of the White House. It was his home, he lived there, but it belonged to them.
He makes it looks rational.
Attitudes like that are
Absolutely.
long gone. They're the victim of population growth. The Athenian.
It's not a victim of ideas. It's not a victim of Marxism. It's not a victim of nationalism. It's not a victim of, I don't know, come up with something. No. The problems in America are not problems with bad ideas. They're not problems of a crazy wokeist left. It's not a problem of corrupt right-wing religionists. It's not a problem of populism. It's not a problem of ideas. No. It's a problem of population growth. You didn't know this, but all the problems in America today are because there are 320 million people here. If only we had 200 million, none of this would have been happening. None of this would have happened. Now, if you push Tucker, I wonder if he'd say it's all because of those immigrants. Which immigrants? The Jews who came in the late 19th century and now overwhelmingly vote Democratic. Maybe it's their fault. Maybe it's the Jews' fault, or maybe it's Hispanics, or maybe it's, you know, the immigrants that we forced to come over here as slaves. I don't know whose fault it is, but it's clearly the fault of population growth.
Invented democratic government, but at its peak, Athens only had about 8,000 voters. So past a certain scale, democracy can't function very.
Now note that even in Athens, democracy didn't function very well. Ultimately, they executed Socrates. Not a good functioning democracy if you execute. So even 8,000 people screw it up. Is it really an issue of size? Is that the problem with democracy? Size? Or is it ideas, scope of power that is the problem?
Very well. The concept of the citizen becomes too abstract. You see it in the way our leaders talk. Politicians barely mention individuals anymore. Instead, they yammer on about voting blocks, which are now called communities. The immigrant community, the trans community, the Latino community, the black community.
As if Tucker cares about individuals.
You hear these terms constantly, but they are nonsensical.
Anytime.
They don't mean anything. For example, there are about 47 million black people in the United States. That's a community? No, it's not.
No, of course not.
By definition, 47 million people cannot be a community, no matter what color the people within it are. How could it be a community? They don't even know each other. What you're looking at is not a community, but 47 million individuals, each created by God as unique, each with opinions and interests and preference and goals that aren't quite the same as anybody else's. In other words,
that's right. And yet you want to tell them whether they can live here or not. You want to tell them how many kids they can have. You want to tell them where they can and cannot go. You want to tell them what their values should be. They are individuals. Leave them alone. Leave them free. That's the whole basis of freedom, the whole basis of capitalism, the whole basis of the American system of government, which you are trying to overthrow.
In other words, they're human beings. People who run big countries tend to forget that.
Again, small countries, they don't forget it.
When you're in charge of hundreds of millions of people, you cannot help but to dehumanize them. Not that
our politicians should be in charge of us, period.
Leaders have ever had a problem with dehumanizing people. In fact, they're strongly for it. A year and a half ago, some idiot kid from Harvard wrote a book demanding that the United States open its borders to an additional 700 million new immigrants from around the world.
Now, this is just stupid insulting, right? This kid from Harvard is 40 years old. He's not a kid. He's a well-known center-left intellectual. He's incredibly successful. He's not some kid from Harvard who wrote a book. The book did quite well. Kid from Harvard. I mean, this is the kind of stupid insults that demagogues resort to when they don't really have an argument. Yeah, the book makes an argument of how if you allowed 700 million people to immigrate to the United States, you would create an incredibly dynamic, worth-creating, prosperous economy. And on its face, it's true. You might object for a variety of different reasons, and maybe some of those are completely legitimate. Yes, it's Matthew. I don't know how to pronounce his name, so I'm not going to try. But the economic fact is true. If you allowed people to come to this country, if you opened the borders, and hundreds of millions of people actually came, the economy of the United States would be dramatically richer.
If we did that, he argued in the book, we'd have a population of 1 billion people, and that might raise our GDP. Wall Street would
significantly.
Be thrilled. Also, of course, would be more diverse with more interesting restaurants. Want Sierra Leonean goat barbecue delivered to your pod at 3 a.m.?
Absolutely.
With 1 billion people living here, you could get that done. As noted, the kid's a moron. But in Washington...
Again, a kid. Iglesias, something like that is his name. But he's 40 years old. He's not a kid. And I'd love to see Tucker debate this moron because he would demolish Tucker.
Washington, and here's the interesting part. No one laughed at him. Quite a few ostensibly smart people agreed with his thesis, including some prominent Republicans who turned out to be as dumb and reckless as he is.
Yep. Anybody who
Apparently,
disagrees
none
with
of them
Tucker,
has
they
ever
must
spent
be
time
dumb.
in a crowded country. Anyone who has knows how deranged it is to want 1 billion people here in the United States. Mass population growth makes life worse for pretty much everybody. That's the main problem with crowded countries.
Okay, we're going to get to crowded countries in a second. I'm not going to let that go. We're going to get to crowded countries in a minute.
Hard to live in. They're loud and dirty and chaotic.
Yep.
There is no privacy. There is no open space. There are never enough resources to go around, so the culture tends to become hyper-competitive and clannish. Crowding is bad for people. It's anti-human. In a famous series of experiments in the late 1940s...
This is why, by the way, people live in New York. This is why people live in Los Angeles. This is why people live in Dallas. This is why people live in Singapore and Hong Kong. Because it's bad for them. And they're just suicidal. This is why people live in London. Tazy lives in London because, I don't know, she's suicidal. Because crowded is horrible. Who wants to live in a city? Who wants to live with lots of other people? Who wants population density? That's awful. That's terrible. All right. We'll get to the billion people in a minute.
He's a researcher called John Calhoun, forced a group of Norway rats to live in highly overcrowded pens. And almost immediately, the rats changed. They became aggressive. Then they became psychotic. Ultimately, they died.
This is the same as human beings. And if you put human beings in a place like Hong Kong, they become psychotic, they become violent, and ultimately they die. Same in London. I mean, you're all psychotic and you're all dying. New York is a death trap. Maybe it is right now, but it doesn't have to be. I mean, really? Again, this is the level. This is tens of millions of people. Watch this stuff.
People aren't so different from that. They need room. That's why our ancestors came to America in the first place, because there was room here.
Oh, they didn't come here because it was free. No, Tucker cannot advocate for that. They didn't come here because of an economic incentive, because they were poor and they wanted to become rich and there were opportunities here. God forbid. No, they came here because there was room. You know, my ancestors left Lithuania because it was so crowded. Not because it was cold. Not because, you know, the Russians and the Lithuanians were killing them in pogroms. That's why they left Russia. That's why they left Ukraine. That's why they left Poland. That's why they left England. That's why they left Ireland. That's why they left Italy. Not to achieve freedom, but because there was room in America for them. And there was no room over there. I mean, that's a 3-year-old. A 3-year-old could beat Tucker in a debate over this. Who writes this crap for him?
You know who still understands this? Rich people understand this. Ask anyone who's been around the world and knows what the options are. Ask, if you left the United States, where would you move? And no one's going to tell you Lagos or Mexico City or even Singapore.
Well, lots of them go to Singapore.
If they're being honest, they'll tell you New Zealand or Alpine Switzerland.
All right, let's take Switzerland. God. So, there's too many people in the United States. And it's crowded. And with 1 billion people in the United States, it would be super crowded. All right, so I looked it up. I Googled, you know, Google, population density by country. Population density by country, not even by city, by country. And I was wondering, you know, where the United States would rank, because according to Tucker, with 320 million people in the United States, it's crowded, noisy, dirty, ugly. We're almost becoming rats in the United States. So I thought the United States would be one of the most crowded countries in the world. And of course, Switzerland was portrayed as the place you go for no people, beautiful scenery, wonderful nature, you know, uncrowdedness. So I'm looking down, and you know, the most crowded place in the world is Macau. So this is both countries and territories. Macau, then Monaco. Very, very crowded. Why is it crowded? Was anybody born in Monaco? No, people go there because they don't mind the crowdedness because it's beautiful. And they don't mind the crowdedness because they don't pay any taxes over there. And then it's Singapore and Hong Kong, number 3 and number 4. Why do people live in Singapore and Hong Kong? They're so crowded. Because they're free? But freedom is not important to Tucker. Freedom is not a consideration. Then it's Gibraltar, Bahrain, Maldives, Malta. You go on and down the thing, and you look at Taiwan. Taiwan's very crowded, much more crowded than China. I don't know why the Taiwanese don't leave Taiwan and go to China. There's more room in China. So why are they living in crowded Taiwan? Then you keep going down. I keep waiting for the United States to pop up, but I'm on 23 already. In South Korea, the 23rd most crowded place on the planet Earth, and the United States has not come up with it. Again, South Korea, awful place to live. I mean, I'm sure North Korea is less crowded. Why aren't they escaping to the less crowded North Korea? We keep going down. There's India. Yeah, I'd expect India to be relatively high. Number 29, Netherlands. Woo, Netherlands. A country people are escaping from all the time. A country that is, you know, number 32 in population density in the world. Number 32. Belgium is number 33. Horrible places that people constantly run away from to go find space somewhere else. We'll get to how densely populated they are in a minute, but it's interesting, right? Japan, very, very, number 36, very densely populated, another place people are escaping from all the time. Puerto Rico, Puerto Rico is very highly dense. I haven't got to the US yet, but Puerto Rico makes it. United Kingdom, Tazy, United Kingdom is number 49 in terms of population density. Keep going down. I keep looking for the United States. It's not here yet. Liechtenstein, Germany, number 60, Germany. Again, horrible place to live. No room, no room. Oh, here's North Korea, 67. So, yeah. Still no the US, no US. Oh, and then an interesting fact, just interesting. Again, something that maybe somebody could have looked up before Tucker Carlson went on air. But it turns out that the 68th most densely populated place on planet Earth is Switzerland. Switzerland. Americans are not going to run to Switzerland because America is less densely populated. How much less? Well, we haven't got to America yet. Switzerland is number 68. So we're still waiting to see where America is, because Switzerland is number 68 of most densely populated countries in the world. Let's keep going. Italy is 72. I don't know, what do we find? China, 82. China's less densely populated than Switzerland. Would you have thought that? I wouldn't. Denmark, 88. Another horrible place because it's so densely populated. Keep going down. Keep looking for America. Hungary, you know, Tucker Carlson's favorite place, is more densely populated than the US. Hungary. It's in number, where was it? I had Hungary here. 107. By the way, there are 200 and something countries and territories according to this list. We still haven't gotten to the United States, 107, right? United States, this place that has way too many people, according to Tucker, is not in the top 100 most densely populated places on planet Earth. Costa Rica is 110. Cambodia, 119. Spain, 120. We've got Romania at 128. Ukraine, 137. Still no US. Keep going down. Georgia, the country of Georgia, not the state, 153. I love Georgia. It's a great place. I don't know, Colombia in South America, 166, still no US. Oh, there it is. Right after Zimbabwe. God. 174th most densely populated country in the world. Let that sink in. Tucker Carlson here is complaining about how many people live in the United States. Too many. It is the 174th most densely populated country in the world. 174th. The United States is basically empty. We have 92 people per square mile. Now let's assume that Tucker Carlson, that we got 1 billion people in the US. So let's assume we tripled our population. We let in 700, close to 700 million people. That would take square mile from 92 people per square mile. You know, I'll multiply that by 3 to what? 9 times 3, 27, 270 people per square mile. Where would that put us? What countries in the world have that kind of population density? So let's make the United States have a population of 1 billion people, which is about 270 people per square mile. I wonder what country corresponds to that level. Let's see. Ooh, Austria. Austria. We'd have the population density of Austria. Has anybody complained recently about how crowded Austria is and how really people are escaping Austria because there's so many people there? Or maybe, let's see, Portugal. Portugal is 286. You know, maybe France, France is much more population dense than that. France is 300, so we would actually have to go well over 1 billion people to have the population density of France. France. God. If we were Switzerland, where was Switzerland? Switzerland was somewhere here. Let me find Switzerland. Switzerland says 547. So Switzerland is about 6 times more dense than the United States. In order for the United States to have the population density of Switzerland, we would have to have a population of, I mean, seriously, in order for the United States to have the population density of Switzerland, the United States population would be 1.8 billion people. Billion people. 1.8 billion people. And Tucker Carlson said Switzerland is the ideal that rich people go live in. Somebody suggest to the producers of Tucker Carlson that they just use Google, fact check, just figure out what the hell they're talking about. By the way, the country that has the smallest population density in the world is Greenland, which I think Donald Trump wanted to buy to give us more territory because, you know, it's this ideal place because it has no population. So Greenland, Iceland is very low. Nobody wants to live in Iceland. Let's see, Western Sahara, Botswana. Let's see, Kazakhstan. It's in the news right now. Massive country with only about 20 million people in it. Oh, Canada. That's what Tucker Carlson wants. He wants America to be like Canada. Canada is a massive country with only less than 40 million people. They have 10 people per square mile. Now, of course, most of that country is under ice. Israel's highly dense, high density. I'm trying to think about what kind of countries. Argentina has that long south where nobody lives. Saudi Arabia doesn't have a lot of people per square mile. Finland. So I guess Tucker's dream is for America to become like Finland, or like Saudi Arabia, or like Canada. That's the standard. Now I understand. I understand what he wants, what his goals are. God.
Those are low-density places. They don't have a lot of other people in them.
Like Greenland and Saudi Arabia.
Why do billionaires buy huge boats? Same reason. The ocean isn't crowded. There's no one else there.
They live in the city, and on the weekends, they like to go where there are no people. But you know what? Many of us, I'm not a billionaire, but many of us love people. Listen to the crap that comes out of his mouth from here on.
Uncrowded is good.
Is it?
Yellowstone is beautiful because it's empty.
No.
You don't have to be rich to understand this. It's all pretty obvious. Really, only in a moment like this one, when the people with the loudest megaphones speak exclusively in lies, would we need to be reminded.
Talk about lies.
Bigger is not always better. In fact, most of the time, it is worse. Have you driven around your country recently? You may have noticed there are fewer and fewer beautiful things in America. You're not imagining that.
Really?
It's real. Dollar
Really?
stores are everywhere. The question is, why is this happening? Well, the people in charge have no taste. That's part of it. They acquire, but they can't discern.
People in charge have no taste. Who has taste? Tucker? Tucker Carlson has taste? And he's going to dictate that taste to the rest of us? But notice what he thinks is ugly.
For some reason, we put private equity firms in charge of the nation's aesthetics. Accountants are doing our exterior design.
Who should do our exterior design? Government officials, government bureaucrat, aesthetic police, classical architects trained by the Tucker Carlson School of Aesthetics? Yeah, I want a Freeman perfect. Tucker is living in a Nazi fantasy where the Fuhrer designs everything. And grandeur and beauty. But is it beautiful? By whose standard?
That's a terrible idea, obviously. But it's not the core problem. The core problem is that bigness is inherently ugly.
Is it? Bigness is inherently ugly. Bigness is inherently ugly. Let's see what's big.
There's never been a beautiful skyscraper.
Whoa! Did you hear that? There's never been a beautiful skyscraper. Now, this is everything you need to know about Tucker Carlson. And everything you need to know about the difference between Tucker Carlson and Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand would say almost, not quite, there's never been an ugly skyscraper. I mean, Ayn Rand loved New York because of its skyscrapers. First time I came to the United States, I came by boat. I came into the New York harbor, and those skyscrapers were magnificent. Beautiful skyline, beautiful buildings. I was blown away by Hong Kong and Shanghai because of their skyscrapers. I can't think of anything more beautiful than a skyscraper. A well-designed one, anyway.
Every single one of them is an atrocity.
Every single one. Not the bad ones. Every single skyscraper is a monstrosity. One of the greatest achievements of human beings, certainly of human construction, is a monstrosity.
The fact that people still pretend otherwise tells you how conditioned we have become to disregard our own nature and our own.
So I'm just conditioned to ignore my nature, because my nature is to sit on the porch. Sit on the porch and be dull and be boring, unambitious, unstriving. Our nature is to return to nature. He's like Rousseau. He's like the left. He's just like the left.
Own natural longings. Would you rather wake up in a $30 million condo on the top floor of an office tower or in a log cabin in a pine forest?
On the penthouse, on the skyscraper, any day. Any day. I live in a penthouse, not a skyscraper. I wish it was a few floors higher. But yeah, any day. I don't want to be in a log cabin in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of no civilization.
Stove glowing as the snow falls. That's a rhetorical question, obviously. No sane person would choose the condo. And yet we're told the condo is better. That's why it costs more. Because
no, it costs more because more people desire it. But they're stupid. They're immoral. They're unconnected to their true nature. Tucker knows better. And Tucker knows why condos are expensive, not because supply and demand, not because people know what they want and go buy them, but because they're told to do it. But because they're automatons. Because they just follow orders. They're just not following the right orders. Tucker wants them to follow his orders, not somebody else's orders. Yes, a condo in a skyscraper, the penthouse in a skyscraper is far better than a log cabin, costs more than a log cabin, because more people desire it. People are willing to pay for it, but they're idiots. They're morons. You're the only one who knows what's good for human beings. You, Tucker Carlson, are in touch with our true nature.
the building is bigger.
Yeah, really? That's
But
why?
how exactly is its scale an advantage? How is that appealing? Well, it's not. In fact, its scale is the problem.
Why?
Massive size is a threat.
Why?
No matter what it is, always.
Oh, God. This says a lot of it here psychologically. Massive size is a threat, always. So the size of the United States threatens you, Tucker? Size of Washington Monument threatens you, Tucker? The size of that dome behind you threatens you, Tucker? The size of the Empire State Building threatens you, Tucker, because it makes you look small. Indeed, that's why cathedrals were so big, to make Tucker feel small.
In our bones, we understand this. Anything huge is inherently terrifying to us. Children run from big things. If there's an upside to the last 2 years of the COVID insanity, and there may be, it's that many Americans seem to be remembering what they long for. Look where they're moving. Almost always it's to someplace smaller. LA to Austin, New York
Austin's not that small anymore.
to Burlington, Seattle to Boise, Chicago to Naples. So it's the reverse of any other internal migration we've ever seen. Americans are moving from the cities to the farms, or at least to the outer suburbs. They want more nature, more human contact, more trees, more quiet.
Actually, you
And it's
get
hard to-
less human contact in nature than you do in a city. You get more human contact in a city. I wonder if they're moving because taxes are lower, Because less regulations? Because these other places are freer? Or is it because of size? They fear the skyscraper and they're running away.
I don't believe they'll ever stop wanting these things because they're natural. They're the things we all want.
So nature's the guide. We want to go back to nature. We want to go back to the state of nature. We want to be naked running around the forest. That's what Tucker really wants. He wants to be in a Rousseau novel.
At some point down the road, you can imagine young people setting out for the all but abandoned interior of our continent. Some of them may figure out that a depopulated Finnish settler town on the banks of Lake Superior may be a better place to live and raise children than some sterile commuter parking lot 20 miles from a crumbling metroplex.
You know, I should have Googled Tucker. Where did Tucker grow up? Where does Tucker live? I know where he lives. Where does he live most of his adult life, if not all of it? Not in that little town on the lake, and I doubt he's ever going to live there. Ever. I mean, this is the kind of front porch, unproductive world that some of these new conservatives want. They want us to go back to nature. He reminds me of reading German conservatives in the 19th century railing against capitalism, railing against urbanization, longing for the days in which the population lived in these small villages and did what they were told, didn't express their individuality by going off to the city, didn't express their materialism by trying to make a living, trying to make a lot of money. This isn't about immigration. None of this was about immigration. None of this, we can debate immigration, but none of this is about immigration. This is about size. The size of the population, how crowded it is. It's just empty nonsense. It's just beneath anything you would have expected from a Tucker Carlson of 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, even 3 years ago. He's just getting worse.
They could figure that out. People aren't that stupid. They've just been misled.
That's right.
Economic forces are going to drive this, by the way, as they always do. For decades, our leaders have ignored the essentials, our food, our energy, our water, in favor of boutique nonsense that improves nobody's life. Pregnant flight suits, ladies and gentlemen. These people are ridiculous, and we're about to see the results of their long-standing negligence. Energy prices, for example, probably aren't going down.
Is that because our leaders ignored energy? Or is energy abundance to this day a product of the private sector? But Tucker doesn't believe in the private sector. So anyway, we'll end it there. He goes on and on about stuff that he doesn't know anything about. He continues on that path for a little while longer, but you get the gist of this. I mean, what left and right share today is basically a hatred of civilization. A hatred of capitalism, a hatred of cities, a hatred of what? Of energy, of progress, of innovation, and a hatred of people. I mean, I love living in a city because there are people. Because people are producing, people are creating, people are making stuff around me. The left and the right today are unified around wanting to escape back to nature. A return to a simpler life, a more primitive life, a direct connection to nature. How long would Tucker Carlson survive in nature? Tucker doesn't strike me particularly as a nature guy. Cities civilize. Cities are a symbol of civilization. High population density is a sign of civilization. Rome at its peak in 300 AD had 1 million people. 500 AD, it had 10,000 people. What was better? What do you think symbolizes civilization versus the victory of barbarism? Well, obviously, when Rome was at 1 million, that was a sign the world was relatively civilized. Trade routes were open. Wealth was being created. There was civilization. When Rome dropped to 10,000, it dropped to 10,000. Why? That was a sign of disintegration. It was a sign of the collapse of civilization, a sign of decay, a sign of the end, the negation of civilization. Yes, a return to nature. Why did Rome collapse, Yaron? Was it related to immigration? No, not at all. Rome collapsed because of ideas. Because Neoplatonic ideas infiltrated the Roman Empire through a variety of different philosophers that affected the elites among the Romans, and because of Christianity, which undermined the very foundations of the Roman Empire. Immigration had nothing to do with the fall of Rome, but that's part of the mythology and stories that some people on the right like to tell, to draw parallels between the two. Christianity killed Rome, but Rome was ready to be slaughtered because it had already weakened itself through a hedonistic and nihilistic philosophy that the elites, the ruling elites, held. They'd already committed themselves to decline. And of course, barbarians using force. They overran Rome, but why was Rome in a position to be overrun by force? Because it had been weakened to such an extent. So, mysticism, but primarily Christianity, a religion of weakness. And again, not just Christianity, but generally Neoplaton ideas, Neoplatonic ideas that had corrupted Rome from within. But this is where we're heading. We're heading towards a unity of left and right, a unity of a hatred for progress, success, wealth, civilization, and an adoration of, this is why I say, I mean, do you think that Tucker Carlson could be an environmentalist? Absolutely. And Tucker Carlson could combine a kind of blood and soil patriotism with environmentalism, with religion, and that combination is what I think is the future of authoritarianism in America. And I think Tucker combines it, has the ability to put it all together in a way that can really change this country for the much, much worse. Tom says, didn't Rome grow because it accepted immigrants? Yeah, sure, Rome had immigrants. It had immigrants from all over the place. Primarily, a lot of Greeks came to Rome. But all over Europe, they came to Rome. But that's not why Rome fell. It's why Rome succeeded. Rome succeeded to the extent that it succeeded because of its ability to integrate. Diego says, Tucker agrees with Kylo Ren and Supreme Leader Snoke in destroying Coruscant in The Force Awakens. The city is too big. I have no idea what those references are to. Something Star Wars, I assume. Yeah, I'm too ignorant of that. All right, guys, I am accepting Super Chat questions. They've been very, very few so far. I've got a few here that are $20. Only $20 questions am I accepting because we're way behind. And if we don't do them all $20 questions, we're never going to get out of here tonight. So $20 questions, we've got a long, long way to go over the next half hour, 40 minutes to get to $600. But I'm not giving up on you because I know you guys often come through in the last minute. So our goals are still where they are. I don't know if I don't know if we have anybody counting. Please, no $5 questions. Let's really try to do these all $20 questions if we're going to do this. Let's see. Somebody sent me a question by email, so let me take this quickly. On Saturday, the city government of Washington, D.C. will impose a citywide vaccination entry requirement for all indoor facilities and require everyone age 12 plus to show proof of vaccination. I would love to attend OCON this summer, but since ARI has chosen DC as its venue, I have decided not to attend as I refuse to spend $1 to support the DC economy and their one-size-fits-all overreach. Shouldn't ARI cancel DC, change venues to free a city, and send a clear message that they will not sanction such bad behavior on part of DC government? I really want to go to OCON, but not if I have to show my papers within the DC city limits. Yeah, I think it's horrible that DC is doing that. I think government mandates on private businesses in terms of showing vaccines and things like that are horrible and should not exist. We have the same mandate here in Puerto Rico. I show my vaccine card, in many facilities when I have to go in. Every restaurant you go to, you have to show your vaccination. Luckily, I go to the restaurant so many times that they stop asking because they know I'm vaccinated. So they stop asking me. But, I mean, there's no way we could change venues. We've already got a hotel. We've had the hotel for a long time now. To break a contract with the hotel would require big financial fines and a big financial expense. It's not easy to find cities that don't have some kind of requirements. Often the hotels will have requirements. So a lot of private businesses have requirements for large groups and conferences in terms of vaccines. I'm attending 2 conferences next week in Miami for finance, unrelated, unphilosophical conferences. Both have to do with hedge funds. Both are in the South Florida area. One is in Miami, one is in West Palm Beach. Both conferences, in order to attend, in order to be there, you have to upload to the conference website either proof of vaccine or a negative COVID test. So yes, the city should not do this. This is horrible. But there are a million things that the city does that are horrible. Every city does something that is horrible. They're violating our rights left and right. Vaccine passports is just the latest of a long, long, long list of ways in which local governments, federal government, violate our rights. I would not support taking a big financial penalty to switch cities because of this particular violation. It's one more among many. It's bad. You could argue maybe it's worse than some, or at least it's a new violation and others that didn't exist before. But if the standard was we could only do conferences in places that didn't violate our rights, we couldn't do conferences anyway. And the inconvenience of it is minor. If you are being vaccinated, it's fairly easy to pull out photographs of the vaccine card and show it to somebody. So, I don't think it warrants it. While I object to mandates, I think they're horrible. I think they're terrible. I'm supporting an organization here in Puerto Rico suing the Puerto Rican government to get rid of those mandates. I don't think it warrants moving OCON. And again, even if we moved OCON, a lot of the places we would move it to would probably require it as well, even if it wasn't a city mandate. Most hotels do for conferences. Again, Florida, which is supposedly, from a COVID perspective, the freest place in America. The 2 conferences I'm going to next week are requiring vaccines. All right, let's see. We've got, now we're starting to get good level of $20 questions. Thank you, guys. But now it looks like you're trying to keep me here for the rest of the night. But this is good pace. This is good pace. Keep it up, and we'll make the 600. We're over $200 now. That's good. So we got a while to go, but maybe somebody can step in with $100 questions. That'll be okay. I'm going to take them in order because some people submitted this early on. Ashton Milky Way says, why is the philosophy of objectivism rejected and chose to not be taught by so many philosophy professors across many universities in the West? I mean, that's a great question. It's not a question I have an easy answer to. But the bottom line is they don't consider it, they don't consider it legitimate philosophy. primarily because it challenges everything that they believe in. It challenges their fundamental assumptions. And on top of that, Ayn Rand didn't write in their language. She didn't write in philosophies. She didn't write in academic in academic terms. So they reject her because she's overturning, 2,000 years of philosophy. She's challenging all their most fundamental basic assumptions. And she's doing it in a language that they don't want to take seriously. And it gives them an excuse not to engage with her ideas. Funnily enough, when you do seminars with them and you actually engage with the ideas with philosophers, they often find her ideas interesting. I know that Alan Gotthelf, when he was alive, used to do seminars on epistemology. Greg Salamiri was at these. And there was some top epistemologists in the world at these seminars, and they found the ideas engaging. They didn't agree, but they didn't reject Ayn Rand offhand like so many do, without really engaging with her ideas. Most of them don't engage. She's a novelist, bad novelist, or what. They just write her off. But when they're actually confronted with ideas, I know that some of the virtue ethicists out there in the world, when they've engaged with Ayn Rand's ideas about ethics, find them interesting. Again, they're not convinced, but they find them interesting. And if they had the courage, they would teach them. But she is so radical, so out of the mainstream, and so outside of the tradition that very few have the courage to actually teach her. All right, we're at about 220, so another $380, guys. So do the math. We need some big whales to come in with $50, $100, $200, $500 contributions to get us where we need to go. If you enjoyed my little shtick on Tucker Carlson, there we go. Shahbaz just did it. But he wants me to review season 3. Oh God. Okay, so now I know where they are. They're on Prime, so I can easily find these episodes. But okay. Thank you, Shahbaz. That is very generous, and I will add this to my list of things I need to review. I'm behind. I'm way behind. I've got Kiki's Delivery Service. I've got The County. I've got A Bronx Tale, and I've got now season 3, episode 4 of Star Trek: The Next Generation. Who watches the watches? Good question. Who watches the watches? All right, where are we? The Kowloon walled city in Hong Kong, at the height of its existence, was the most densely populated place on Earth, 50,000 people in 6 acres. Its residents were productive, largely content, and nonviolent. It's a great history. Yeah. I mean, Hong Kong more broadly is the 4th most densely populated city in the world. Singapore is the 3rd most densely populated country in the world. And the people in Singapore are pretty content. They're pretty wealthy. People are not rushing to leave Hong Kong to go find space. It's just silly. The whole thing with Tucker, just silly. Ashton Milky Way says, the greatest critique of Ayn Rand's philosophy, Ayn Rand's philosophy of objectivism, comes from not a philosopher nor an academic doctrine, but from a video game named BioShock. Have you heard of this game? If so, what did you think of it? Yeah, I heard of the game. At the time, I did a bunch of interviews when the game came out about BioShock. I think my son played it. I think I was on an interview once with the guy who created BioShock. It wasn't really a critique of it. I mean, it was a silly critique. I mean, there's a guy who just wrote a sequel to Atlas Shrugged, which is a critique. But the game expresses a very shallow understanding of Ayn Rand's philosophy and then critiques it. But he starts out with the straw man, with the shallow representation of objectivism. So it's not a critique. It's certainly not a great critique. It's a silly critique. It might be a great game. A lot of people have told me it's a good game. But in terms of it's not a critique of the philosophy because it doesn't understand the philosophy. It critiques something that it calls objectivism, that it calls Ayn Rand, but that's not her ideas. I wish it was. We'd have a real conversation going on, but there is no conversation, unfortunately. Michael asks, what is the evolutionary advantage of humans evolving nihilistic capabilities? You'd think that capacity would naturally doubt. Evolution does not dictate ideas. Evolution does not dictate ideas. Evolution provides us with the capacity to form ideas. It doesn't provide us with the content of those ideas, only with the capacity to abstract and to come up with ideas broadly. What specific ideas we come up with is not guided by evolution. The fact is that bad ideas, murderous ideas, suicidal ideas have pervaded human history. Plato's ideas, which I think are horrible for human life and human success, have dominated. Christianity, ideas that are anti-happiness, anti-success, anti-production have dominated. And for thousands of years, human beings did not improve their lot. We did not become wealthier. We did not live longer. We did not do well as human beings. We did well, okay, from an evolutionary perspective. We survived, but not as human beings, as animals. To survive as human beings requires good ideas. And good ideas are conceptual. And they don't abide by the laws of evolution. Indeed, human beings today, I mean, let's say you have a bad idea. And the bad idea, let's say you're just a overly risk taker and you drive your car too fast and you get into horrible car accident. And if evolution functioned, you would just die. And that was be it. And to the extent that you had a risk-taking gene, that's not genetic, but if you had risk-taking gene, or you had risk-taking ideas, now you couldn't propagate those ideas. But the fact is we don't let you die. We send you into a hospital. We devote resources to performing surgery on you, and you survive so that you can get into another car accident later. Nazism still exists out there in the world in spite of the defeat of the Nazis. Communism. Communism is seeing a resurgence in spite of the complete and utter annihilation of communism. Because ideas don't function based on evolutionary principles. People have free will. And they can reject the good. They can embrace evil. They can embrace death. They can commit suicide, fast or slow. They can embrace socialism and communism and poverty and horrible things in their life. Evolution doesn't work on people anymore. Because we don't let it. We have ideas, we have medicine, we have healthcare, we have ways in which to prevent people from dying because, and even if somebody dies because of their bad ideas, there might be other bad ideas. So don't relate evolution to developed human beings. Ashton, Milky Way, $50 gets priority. Thank you, Ashton. This is great. Are all forms of altruism bad? If not, what would be an example of good altruism? Well, look, you have to define your terms. You can't just throw out a term like altruism. You have to, what is altruism? What do we mean by altruism? Well, what altruism actually means is the placing of the well-being of other people above your own, the negation of your own self-interest. It means that your purpose in life is to serve others, to live for others. And in that sense, all forms of altruism are evil, bad. Wrong from every perspective. There is no such thing as good altruism. But when people use altruism out there in the culture, they often just mean polite, thoughtful, charitable. Yeah, but all of those are good, can be good, depends on the circumstances. But that's not altruism, even though that's the way people use it. Altruism is a term coined by Auguste Comte, and it is a term that basically says that your life, the purpose of your life, is to serve other people. That the extent to which you think about your own interest, your own happiness, your own values, the things that are important to you, to that extent you are not moral. That's evil. That is the essence of evil. Because it is essentially says that your life matters not to you. What does matter, and why should anything matter if my life doesn't matter to me? Whatever matters out there in the world matters to me because of its impact on my life. To the extent that Mother Teresa was altruistic, she was motivated by an evil ideology. All right, let's see. Where are we? We're $80 short, so 4 $20 questions, and we made it to our $600 goal. Maybe we should go to $750 just for the fun of it. But we're very close, guys, so don't let this slip by with a subpar. And I don't have that many questions left. All right. Charlie asks, Yaron, why is Tucker afraid of the massive people and the girthy buildings? Because he's afraid. He's afraid of free people. He's afraid of letting people make decisions for themselves. He's afraid that they will decide things that he doesn't like. He knows that free people don't want to be ruled. Free people don't want to be dictated to. Free people don't want him to decide on their aesthetics. Tucker has turned into a real power luster. He wants power. And if you want power, the last thing in the world you want is people thinking for themselves, making choices for themselves. And the symbol of success, which is a skyscraper, the symbol of man reaching for the stars, the symbol of man's achievement. He doesn't want to see that. He wants you to be, he wants you to be puny. He wants you to be small. He wants you not to think. He wants you to be controllable. People who live in skyscrapers, who understand what it means to live in the penthouse of the skyscrapers, cannot be controlled. People who love skyscrapers cannot be controlled. He wants to control. And he's bought into this, I don't know, maybe he's just not that smart. Maybe he's innocently, maybe he could be a power luster, that's one interpretation. Others, that he's bought into this agrarian, back to nature, kind of philosophy for people, although not for him. He doesn't live that way. And he's bought into this nonsense. That's another possibility. And everything else he really is afraid of, because it's not part of our roots. Yeah, Scott says that he read the Rousseau French Revolution chapter of Cave in the Light last night. Yeah. Tucker Rousseau is a scary development. Yes. And I've said this for years now. The real danger is when the conservatives become Rousseau-like. And then they unite around Rousseau. The left and the right unite around Rousseau. But that is a brilliant chapter. And in Cave in the Light, Ayn Rand views Immanuel Kant as the most evil philosopher and the guy responsible for the modern world. And I think she's right, but the Cave in the Light views Rousseau as the most evil of the philosophers, the philosopher that really is trying to destroy the modern world. And in that sense, I think Kant is worse, but they go hand in hand. And much of the modern left is inspired by Rousseau. Kant is a much more sophisticated philosopher, much more influential philosopher, much more important philosopher. But Rousseau is an inspiring philosopher. Rousseau is what people who can't read Kant can read. They can read Rousseau. Rousseau is understandable. He writes in English, not in English, in French, but in terms that people can understand. And Rousseau inspires today, both left and right. Kant, of course, had a portrait of Rousseau above his desk. So Kant viewed himself as a continuation, if you will, of Rousseau. Rousseau was an inspiration. All right, let's see. Michael asks, slightly off topic, but I've been thinking about this. If animals can't go beyond the senses, well, they can go beyond the senses. They can't go beyond perception. How do they watch, learn, respond to human emotion like dogs, for example? That's perception. They can perceive, so they can integrate sense information into a perceptual knowledge, but not into concepts. So not into abstractions. Now, again, this is the kind of question that's good for Harry Binswanger. And do dogs have some free will, a little bit of free will? Do they have some conceptual ability? I think Harry's going to say no. But it's not that they can't go beyond the senses. They can go beyond the senses, but they can go only to the point of taking sensual data and turning it into a perception, into knowing that this person is this particular person, which is a percept. What they can't is form a concept of man, of men, and think abstractly about that. Okay, Tom, since we're talking about immigration, do you have any advice for people trying to immigrate to the United States? Any paths towards getting a green card that you would recommend? I think the easiest way to get a green card is the way I got a green card, which is to come to the United States to study, particularly for a graduate degree. Even if you don't really want a graduate degree, it's just worth it as a way of getting in. But that's how I did it. I came to the United States, got a master's degree, and then got a PhD ultimately, and then got a job and got a green card through that. So I think that's the easiest, best, safest way to legally do it. It's very difficult from any other way to do it. Any other way is unbelievably difficult. People don't understand how much talent we are keeping out of this country because of our stupid immigration laws. Ashton has taken us over the $600 mark. Thank you, Ashton. Johan, I got nothing but respect for you and your views on the economy. Keep up the good fight. Are you doing any lecture speeches in Massachusetts anytime soon? Not that I know of. So if somebody invites me to come to Boston, or to come to Babson, or to come to Harvard, or to come to MIT. I used to speak at Harvard and MIT a lot, but I haven't in a long time. I'd love to come. So get a group together and invite me to come. Go bug the student groups at some of these universities to invite me to come, and I would love to. Generally, I'm open to invitation. I will go anywhere pretty much in the world to come and speak if I'm invited. If you can pay, that's better. If you're a student, you don't even have to pay. Just, I need you to secure a venue, an organization to sponsor the talk, make sure that there are at least 50 people in the audience, and anywhere in the world, pretty much, I will come. Do it. All right, Colt asks, I love this, Colt Savage, I love that name. You know, I'm listening to your show right now in the deep country where I'm completely surrounded by woods with basically no neighbors. Good for you. I like it, and it's where I've grown up. Does this now mean I'm on the likes of Tucker? It doesn't mean you like Tucker. You can like nature and you can like living that way. But to imply that that is the best, the only way in which human beings should live is absurd and kind of a philosopher king mentality where you dictate to other people values. And to not understand the value for somebody of living in a city. I can completely understand people not wanting to live in a city, particularly if they've never lived in one. But that's not the argument Tucker's making. He's not making the argument of, well, some people like to live in the wilderness, and good for them, and that's great. And some people like to live in the cities, and I see the value in that. No, he's saying, if we were really true to our nature, if we connected to who we really were as human beings, we'd all want to live in the woods. I don't want to live in the woods. I have no desire to live in the woods. I don't like the woods. I completely understand you're liking the woods. I have no problem with that. It's not true that I don't like the woods. I do. And I could imagine living there. I love living by the ocean. You like living in the woods. I like to be able to go 4 or 5 times a week to restaurants, not to have to hunt my own food. But these are choices that we make as individuals. So I respect your choice as an individual to live where you want to live. But the existence of cities is the existence of civilization. Indeed, even in the woods, I assume you drive somewhere to get your groceries, and you use an iPhone, you have computers, and you have internet, and you have all these things. All things made in the cities. That if we just lived in the countryside, we wouldn't have them. We wouldn't have those things. So even people who live in the countryside, in the woods, in nature, are dependent for their survival and their thriving on the productive capabilities of the people and the network effects and all the advantages that exist from living in the cities. Adam, thank you. That's very generous. Finally caught up and listened to that robot interview you and Michael Malice on your deserted island. I have no idea what you're talking about. I assume you're talking about the Lex Friedman interview that we did. Seriously, I loved every 4 hours of it. Yeah, it was fun. By the way, any day now, Lex Friedman will post the interview he did with me and Yoram Chazoni. Any day now, Lex will post it, and it's 3 hours, 3.5 hours, 3.5 hours, I think. So more to come from Lex Friedman. All right, let's see. Steve and Pettit. Thoughts on Steven Sotomayor musicals. I mean, I like them. They're not my favorite. There's a darkness to Steven Sotomayor that I'm not a big fan of. I'm trying to think. I mean, I like West Side Story, but he didn't write the music, of course, to that. I mean, he wrote good music, but the lyrics and the stories and the music, there's a darkness to it. So while I appreciated him, he wasn't my favorite. And generally, I'm not a musicals guy. I like musicals, but I'm an opera guy. Operetta, but mainly opera guy. All right. Shazbot wants to elevate Frank's question. Okay. Since you like Harry Potter, philosophically, would an egoist or productive person do well in Slytherin house? I never considered Slytherin evil. No, I don't think the point of the house is that Slytherin was evil, although, God, I don't remember enough of Harry Potter to comment, really. I didn't consider it evil, but there was something about Slytherin that left it open and susceptible to evil in the way that the house that Harry Potter was in was not. And I can't remember what it was exactly. So I shouldn't comment because it's been too long since I watched Harry Potter. And of course, philosophically, I don't remember enough about Harry Potter to comment philosophically. It was a story about a hero. I didn't like the ending because it had too much of a Christian element to it. But I guess that's what sells books. Harry Potter had to basically die and be resurrected in order to save the world, and had to sacrifice and all of that. But I liked Voldemort's. I liked the way he was portrayed, the evil that he was, because evil is the negation of life, the negation of good, the negation of light. And I think she did a very good job in dramatizing evil. And I liked Harry Potter, who, in the early books, I thought he was a little too passive. a lot of the stuff happened by chance. He didn't initiate a lot of the books. I was yelling, Harry Potter, why don't you ask this question? He didn't ask enough questions. So there were certain frustrating elements about Harry Potter, but generally I liked the books. They were fun. They were certainly exciting. All right. Let's see. We have Harold asks, we have the same closed border nationalist making the silly arguments in Australia and other places, too populated, right? Taking jobs, density, don't want more foreign food, etc. Yeah, I know it's global. It's self-hatred. It's cowardice. It's fear, not cowardice. People are afraid. People are afraid. And that's why most objections to immigration are rooted in fear. Rooted in fear. Okay, what's this last question? In this synthetic dichotomy asks, what is your opinion of David Card's Nobel Prize? Was it justified? I mean, I don't think so. He was the one who did, I think, the study that showed that raising the minimum wage didn't have an impact on unemployment. I mean, that study has been shown to be dramatically flawed. I don't know what else he did that justified the Nobel Prize. I don't know him. I don't know him that well. And so labor economics, I don't think labor economics is particularly great shape. I don't think there's a good understanding out there about labor economics and how, for example, the minimum wage functions. And if David Card is one of the people who's created some of this confusion and some of his misguided studies, then no, he does not deserve the Nobel Prize in economics for that. Yes, there are lots of good rebuttals. Oh, God. Just look up, just Google rebuttals too. But I remember that, what's his name, the Nobel Prize winner in economics, the Milton Friedman student, colleague. See, I can't remember names, so it's very difficult for me to give references. You know what you do? Go to the Grumpy Economist, John Cochran's website, and put in David Card's name, put in minimum wage, and read what he has to say about the minimum wage. And he rebutes the thinking behind David Card's ideas. So Grumpy Economist, and from there you'll probably find references to everybody else who does the same thing. So there are plenty of people who have refuted David Card's ideas, you know, but a good source of that would be John Cochran from the Grumpy Economist. And, you know, Stanford University and University of Chicago. All right, everybody. Thank you. We made the 600. We made over $600. So thank you again for all the support and the confidence in the Iran Book Show. We do our best to bring the ideas of reason and individualism and capitalism to egoism to a wide audience. You can expect debates and a lot more engagement with the current ideas and the current personalities in the culture. Today we did Tucker Carlson. 2 days ago we did one of the biggest topics in the culture, which is slavery and capitalism. We did that with Sam Seder. I'm sure next week it'll be somebody else. We're going to continue to go after the mistaken ideas that are prevalent in the culture, the mistaken ideas, the mistaken facts, the stupidity of people. I mean, Tucker Carlson, it wasn't even facts or ideas. It was just stupid. We're going to call them out on it. We're going to call the BS. So you can expect a lot of BS watch shows from the Iran Book Show in the weeks and months to come, and that's what you're helping make possible. So if you want me to keep calling out the BS in the world out there, keep supporting the show. One of the best ways to support the show is to like it before you leave. Press the like button. To, of course, use the super chat to to support the show. But the best way is to support it financially on a monthly basis with a monthly contribution. You can do that on youronbookshow.com/support. You can do it on Subscribestar. You can do it on Patreon and on Locals. I will see you all on Saturday and Sunday. The shows will probably be at 2 p.m. East Coast time. We'll see if I have to change that, but right now that's the time. I don't have topics yet. I'll come up with topics tomorrow or Saturday morning or something. We'll probably do a newsy show. There was a Supreme Court ruling today that had some important stuff. We'll talk about that. And we'll talk about stuff that's going on in Kazakhstan, Ukraine, and Russia. And we'll see what else comes up in the news. But we'll definitely do a news show on either Saturday or Sunday. I will see you all on the weekend. Have a great